Before we get started, hit the comments and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Whether you're catching sunrise in Nairobi, burning midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to hear from you. Don't just watch silently, let me know where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The desert airstrip smelled like hot metal and fear. Rotor wash from the damaged Black Hawk kicked dust into everyone's eyes, turning the sunset into a red haze. The helicopter sat crooked, one landing skid half buried in sand, engine whining like a wounded animal. Somewhere beyond the hills, gunfire popped, too far to see, close enough to count. Commander Rourke Halden stood near the nose of the aircraft, helmet tucked under his arm, jaw tight. His voice cut through the chaos. Who here can fly? The question landed wrong. This wasn't a classroom. This wasn't a drill. This was a kill zone. The SEALs looked at one another. Some shook their heads. Others stared at the ground. Their pilot lay 20 feet away on a stretcher, chest rising in shallow, uneven jerks, blood soaking through his flight suit. Shrapnel had torn through his shoulder and neck. He wasn't flying anything ever again. The silence stretched. Dust stuck to sweat. Fingers tightened on rifles. Somewhere, a radio crackled and died. Halden's eyes hardened. I'm not asking for confidence, he snapped. I'm asking for truth. If that bird doesn't get airborne in 10 minutes, we're all dead. Still nothing. Then, movement. At the back of the formation, almost hidden behind a supply crate, the medic stood up. Elias Crow. No one reacted at first. Because no one ever did. Crow was the quiet one. The one who cleaned wounds and stitched skin and spoke only when spoken to. Average height. Plain face. His helmet always scuffed, his gear always a little older than everyone else's. He wasn't the guy you bet on when things went bad. He was the guy you forgot was even there. Until now. I can, Crow said. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Every head turned. Someone let out a short, humorless laugh. Another SEAL muttered, "You've got to be kidding me." A third shook his head, lips curling in disbelief. Halden stared at him. You're a medic. Yes, sir. You logged flight hours? Crow hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Enough for doubt to bloom like rot. Yes, sir. The wind howled harder, flinging sand against their legs. In the distance the gunfire picked up, closer now. Faster. Halden stepped closer, eyes drilling into Crow's. This isn't a sim. You screw this up, men die. You sure you want to say yes? Crow swallowed. Images flashed behind his eyes, his father's hands on a rusted Cessna yoke, the smell of oil and coffee, a runway carved out of farmland. A crash. Fire. Silence. Years of silence. He nodded once. I'm sure. The laughter died. Halden studied him like a puzzle that didn't fit. Then, sharp and final, get in. Crow didn't smile. Didn't explain. He jogged toward the helicopter, boots thudding against the metal floor as he climbed inside the cockpit. As he settled into the pilot's seat, his hands hovered over the controls. They trembled. Outside, a SEAL shouted, "Contact! East Ridge!" Rifles came up. The first bullets cracked overhead. Crow closed his eyes for half a second. Then he opened them and the past came roaring back. And just as the engine coughed and the rotors began to turn, a missile warning screamed. All right, here we go. Energy shift. Backward in time. Quiet pain before the storm. 3 years earlier, Elias Crow learned the power of being invisible. It happened the first week he joined the unit, standing in a concrete hallway that smelled like disinfectant and old sweat. The other medics joked too loud, slapped backs, traded war stories they hadn't earned yet. Crow stood at the end of the line, helmet under his arm, eyes forward, saying nothing. No one asked where he came from. That suited him fine. Crow had learned early that questions led to memories and memories led to mistakes. So he worked. Quietly. Precisely. He ran trauma drills until his fingers moved faster than thought. He stitched skin so clean the scars almost disappeared. When men screamed, he stayed calm. When they cried, he pretended not to notice. Commander Halden noticed something else. During a live-fire exercise in the Arizona desert, a young SEAL panicked when a charge detonated too close. Shrapnel tore through his thigh. Chaos followed, shouting, dust, blood pooling fast. Crow moved before anyone ordered him to. He dropped, cut fabric, clamped arteries, and packed the wound in seconds. His hands never shook. His breathing never changed. When the evac bird arrived, the man was alive because Crow had been faster than fear. Afterward, Halden watched Crow from a distance. Good work, he said later. Crow nodded. Just my job, sir. That answer annoyed Halden. Men who did extraordinary things usually wanted credit. Crow didn't. He faded back into the background, content to let louder men fill the space. But not everyone ignored him. Petty Officer Lance Merrick noticed. Merrick was everything Crow wasn't: tall, sharp-tongued, confident to the edge of arrogance. A natural leader. The kind who believed silence meant weakness. He'd clap Crow on the shoulder too hard, joke about how medics hid behind bandages, laugh when Crow didn't laugh back. "Man, do you ever talk?" Merrick asked once, cleaning his rifle. Crow didn't look up. "When it matters." Merrick smirked. "Sure." The tension never exploded. It simmered. Jealousy didn't need noise to grow. At night, when the barracks settled and snores filled the room, Crow lay awake, staring at the ceiling. That was when the memories crept in. The small airfield. His father's calm voice. The sudden mechanical failure. The sound of the engine dying mid-sky. And the fire. Crow had been 16. Old enough to understand death. Young enough to blame himself. He hadn't flown since. Not once. He kept that buried, along with the certificate folded deep in his duffel. The one that proved he'd earned his pilot's license years before the crash. Years before he promised himself he'd never touch a cockpit again. Until war ignored promises. The first deployment tested him harder than training ever could. A night raid went sideways in a village lit only by moonlight and burning huts. An IED tore through their convoy. Screams filled the dark. Crow crawled through smoke and gunfire, dragging men twice his size to safety, hands slick with blood that wasn't his. At one point he looked up and saw a helicopter hovering low, pilot struggling against heavy wind and enemy fire. Their eyes met just for a second. Crow felt something twist inside him. Fear. Longing. Regret. The helicopter pulled away. The moment passed. Later, back at base, Merrick cornered him. "You ever scared?" Merrick asked, voice low, not mocking this time. Crow met his gaze. "Every day." Merrick frowned like he didn't know what to do with honesty. That night, Crow wrote a letter he never sent. Folded it. Burned it. He told himself the past was dead. But the desert had a way of digging up bones. And far away, on a future airstrip soaked in blood and sand, the question waited for him. Who can fly? Locked in. We push forward, setup tightens, pressure builds, cracks start to show. The first time Elias Crow almost spoke up, someone died anyway. It was a dawn operation in the Zagros foothills, pale blue light spilling over rock and scrub. The plan was clean on paper. Insert, extract a hostage, exfil by air in under 20 minutes. Crow stood near the rear ramp of the helicopter, medbag strapped tight, eyes scanning the pilot's hands as they worked the controls. Something felt off. The wind was wrong, crossing harder than forecast. The pilot compensated late, overcorrected, then laughed it off. "She's just grumpy this morning," he said over the intercom. Crow opened his mouth, then closed it. Who was he to question a pilot? He was just the medic. The quiet one. The guy who fixed damage after it happened. The helicopter touched down too hard. The skid clipped a rock. Metal shrieked. The bird lurched, rotors slashing the air inches from stone. They recovered, barely, but the noise carried. Gunfire erupted from the ridge within seconds. The mission still succeeded. The hostage came home. But during extraction, a SEAL named Tomas Reyes caught a round through the chest. Crow worked on him for 11 minutes, hands pressing, voice calm, eyes steady. Reyes died anyway. That night, Crow sat alone behind the barracks, helmet at his feet, dust on his boots. The sky above was crowded with stars, uncaring and distant. He replayed the moment again and again, the wind, the pilot's laugh, his own silence. Merrick found him there. "You okay?" Merrick asked, lighting a cigarette. Crow nodded. "It was a lie." "You did everything you could," Merrick said. "Sometimes that's not enough." Crow finally spoke. "Sometimes it could be." Merrick glanced at him, confused. "What?" "Nothing." The words settled between them, heavy. From then on, something shifted. Crow paid closer attention. Not just to wounds, but to patterns. To stress in voices. To hesitation in hands. He noticed how pilots adjusted their grip when tired. How engines sounded different just before failure. He wrote things down in a small notebook he kept hidden in his locker. Observations no one asked for. Still he didn't share them. Because speaking meant explaining. And explaining meant telling the story he'd spent years burying. The day Commander Halden nearly forced it out of him came during a storm. Rain hammered the tarmac, turning the base into a maze of puddles and mud. A training flight had gone overdue. Radios crackled with fragments, static, then silence. Crow stood in the operations room, arms crossed, listening. His chest tightened. He recognized the tone in the last transmission. Engine strain. Panic masked by professionalism. Halden noticed him staring at the screen. You hear something we don't? Halden asked. Crow hesitated. The room felt smaller. Every answer had a cost. It sounds like fuel starvation, Crow said carefully. Maybe contaminated intake. The room went quiet. The comms officer snapped back to the radio. Orders were shouted. Minutes later, the helicopter limped back into view, coughing smoke, landing hard but intact. Halden turned to Crow slowly. How did you know? Crow shrugged. Lucky guess. Halden didn't buy it, but he didn't push. Yet. From that day on, eyes followed Crow more often. Respect crept in, unwanted and uncomfortable. Merrick's joke stopped. His look sharpened instead. Jealousy has a sound. It's quiet. It clicks like a safety coming off. Crow felt it but didn't understand why. Until the mission briefing a week later, when Halden announced air support would be limited. One bird. One pilot. Merrick smiled then, tight, unreadable. And Crow felt the weight of every moment he hadn't spoken, stacking up like sandbags around his chest. Because silence didn't just protect secrets. It created enemies. And soon that silence would be tested. By fire, by betrayal, and by a question that would no longer allow him to hide. Here it comes, the past tightens its grip. Lines are drawn. The quiet starts to crack. The mission that changed everything began with laughter. It shouldn't have. But it did. They were packed into the briefing room, boots on concrete, gear stacked along the walls. A map glowed on the screen. Mountain pass, narrow valley, enemy supply route marked in red. Commander Halden stood at the front, calm and focused. Merrick leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. One bird, he said aloud. That's cute. A few men chuckled. Crow stood near the back, med bag at his feet, eyes on the map. He noticed the elevation lines, the tight turns, the wind funneling through the pass. His throat tightened. Halden shot Merrick a warning look. One bird is what we've got. We adapt. Merrick nodded, but his eyes flicked toward Crow. A quick glance. Sure. Measuring. After the briefing, Crow checked his gear twice. Then a third time. Habit born from loss. He paused by the hangar, watching the helicopter idle, rotors chopping the air. The pilot joked with the crew, confident, relaxed. Too relaxed. Crow stepped closer, heart thudding. He imagined his father's hands again, steady, sure, then the moment they weren't. He almost spoke. Merrick appeared beside him. You good, Doc? He asked, voice light. Crow nodded. Yeah. Merrick smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. The insertion went smoothly at first. Night swallowed them whole as they moved through the pass, boots crunching on gravel, breath loud in their ears. Crow followed, counting heartbeats, scanning shadows. The helicopter circled once, then pulled back to hold position. That's when the ambush hit. Gunfire exploded from above. Muzzle flashes lit the rock walls like lightning. Men dove for cover. Crow dropped beside a fallen SEAL, hands already working, blood warm against his gloves. Bird? We need the bird, someone shouted. The radio crackled. Static. Panic. Crow looked up just in time to see the helicopter bank hard, too hard. Wind slammed into it from the side, pushing it toward the cliff face. The pilot fought the controls, rotors screaming in protest. Crow's chest seized. He knew that angle. That sound. Pull up. Crow yelled before he could stop himself. Pull up now. The words tore out of him, raw and desperate. Too late. The rotor clipped stone. Metal shrieked. The helicopter spun, slammed into the slope, and vanished in a bloom of fire. The gunfire stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and stunned. Someone whispered, "Oh God." Crow couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to the burning wreckage, the heat on his face, the echo of an engine dying, just like before. Merrick turned slowly, eyes wide, then narrowing as they locked onto Crow. You knew, Merrick said. Crow shook his head. You knew something was wrong, Merrick snapped, stepping closer. And you said nothing. Until it was too late. Halden pushed between them. Enough. But the damage was done. The mission turned into a survival crawl. No air support. No easy extraction. Crow worked non-stop, saving who he could, hands moving on instinct while his mind screamed. That night, as they hid in the rocks waiting for pickup at dawn, Merrick sat across from Crow, cleaning his weapon. You ever wonder how many people die because you don't speak? Merrick asked quietly. Crow didn't answer. Because the answer was already burning inside him. And because deep down he knew this wasn't over. The fire in Merrick's eyes wasn't grief. It was blame. And soon that blame would turn into something far more dangerous. We shift gears now, slower on the surface, sharper underneath. Consequences. Pressure. The noose tightening. They walked out of the mountains instead of flying. It took 2 days. 2 days of blistered feet, empty canteens, and eyes that never stopped scanning the ridgelines. The sun burned during the day, the cold bit at night. Crow moved from man to man, checking wounds, rationing painkillers, forcing hydration. His body worked on instinct. His mind stayed trapped in the fireball on the cliff. No one thanked him. No one joked. Merrick barely looked at him. When they finally reached the extraction zone, a flat stretch of desert marked by orange panels, the incoming helicopter felt unreal, like a trick. As it lifted them away, Crow kept his eyes on the floor of the bird, jaw clenched, hands locked together to keep them from shaking. Back at base, the investigation began immediately. Questions. Reports. Replayed audio. Satellite stills frozen at the moment of impact. Crow sat alone in a white room, hands folded, listening as an officer read from a clipboard. Did you notice anything unusual before insertion? Crow chose each word carefully. The wind was stronger than forecast. Did you inform anyone? No, sir. The pen paused. Why not? Crow swallowed. Because I was afraid. Because I didn't think it was my place. Because the last time I trusted my instincts, my father died. Instead, he said, I wasn't sure. The officer nodded and moved on. That answer went into a file. So did Crow. Merrick's debrief was louder. Angrier. He knew something, Merrick said, pacing. He yelled right before it happened. That wasn't a guess, that was panic. Are you accusing Petty Officer Crow of negligence? The investigator asked. I'm saying silence killed that pilot, Merrick replied. And silence is his specialty. The word spread fast. By the next week, Crow felt it everywhere. In conversations that stopped when he entered a room, in eyes that slid past him, in the way no one asked him to join them at the gym or the mess hall. He became invisible again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was isolating. Halden called him into his office late one evening. The lights were low. A single desk lamp cast long shadows. You want to tell me something? Halden asked. Crow stood at attention. No, sir. Halden studied him for a long moment. You're one of the best medics I've ever seen. But you carry weight like a man hiding under it. Crow said nothing. Halden sighed. This team runs on trust. Silence erodes that. Figure out which side you're on. Dismissed. That night, Crow opened his locker and finally unfolded the certificate. The ink was faded. His name still clear. He stared at it until his vision blurred. He didn't burn it. He couldn't. Weeks passed. Missions continued. Crow performed flawlessly, saving lives, never missing a step. But something inside him shifted, from shame to resolve. He started speaking up in small ways, suggesting alternate routes, flagging weather changes, quietly, respectfully. Some listened. Merrick didn't. Their breaking point came during a night patrol when Merrick ignored Crow's warning about a collapsed structure. A floor gave way. Merrick fell hard, shattering his ankle. Crow reached him first. As he worked, Merrick hissed through clenched teeth, "Don't pretend you care now." Crow met his eyes. "I always did." Merrick looked away. As the medevac lifted Merrick out, Crow watched the helicopter fade into the dark. He felt no satisfaction. Only the weight of inevitability. Because deep down, Crow knew something worse was coming. Something that would strip away excuses. Something that would force the question again. And this time, there would be no room left for silence. Here we go. Pressure turns personal. The past steps out of the shadows. Merrick was gone for 6 weeks. The medevac bird that carried him out took more than a broken ankle. It took the tension with it. The team breathed easier. Jokes returned, quieter than before, but real. Crow stayed the same. Steady hands, few words, eyes always watching. Too many eyes, some thought. It happened on a training night meant to be routine. Low light. Simulated fire. A mock casualty screaming convincingly enough to raise heart rates. Crow worked through it cleanly, directing 2 younger SEALs with calm authority. When it ended, Halden pulled him aside. "You ever think about advancing?" Halden asked. Crow frowned. "Advancing how, sir?" "More responsibility. Leadership. You read situations faster than most of my officers." Crow felt the old reflex tighten in his chest. Deflect. Decline. Disappear. "I'm where I'm useful," he said. Halden studied him. "That's not an answer." Before Crow could respond, the alarm sounded. Real this time. A helicopter limped into the perimeter, tail smoking, landing hard. Crew spilled out, shouting. A training accident, fuel system failure midair. No fatalities. Barely. Crow froze. He knew that failure. He'd seen it before. Heard it. Smelled it. He walked straight to the bird, ignoring shouted warnings, climbed up and leaned into the cockpit. His fingers traced a cracked line near the intake, almost reverent. "Who taught you to look there?" a crew chief asked. Crow didn't answer. That night, Halden called him in again. This time the door closed behind him. "You didn't guess," Halden said flatly. "You recognized it." Crow's pulse thudded in his ears. "Sir." "Stop," Halden cut in. "I don't care why you haven't said it before. I care that you tell me now." Silence stretched. Thick. Suffocating. Crow exhaled slowly. "My father was a pilot," he said. The words felt fragile like glass. "Crop dusters. Small transports. He taught me to fly when I was 12. Halden's expression didn't change. "I got licensed at 16, Crow continued. "We were flying together. Engine failure. I tried to compensate. I overcorrected." He swallowed hard. "We crashed. I walked away. He didn't." The room felt suddenly very small. "I stopped flying," Crow said. "Joined the military. Became a medic because I thought if I saved enough people, maybe it would balance out." Halden leaned back, absorbing it. "You've been carrying this alone?" he said. "Yes, sir." "Why not tell anyone?" Crow laughed softly. "Because heroes fly. Medics clean up." Halden didn't smile. "That's a lie we tell ourselves so we don't have to step forward." Before Crow could respond, the door opened. Merrick stood there, crutches under his arms, ankle-wrapped, face pale but eyes sharp. "I knew it," Merrick said. Crow turned slowly. "How much did you hear?" "Enough," Merrick replied. "So all this time, you could have been a pilot." Crow shook his head. "I chose not to be." Merrick's jaw tightened. "And people died." The words landed like a punch. "Yes," Crow said quietly. "And I live with that." The room vibrated with unsaid things. Halden stepped between them. "That's enough," he said. "This isn't a courtroom." Merrick scoffed. "It should be." He turned and left, anger trailing behind him like smoke. Halden looked back at Crow. "We're deploying again. High risk." Crow nodded. "I'll be ready." Halden held his gaze. "So will the truth. Make peace with it." Crow left the office and stepped into the night air. Somewhere on the tarmac, a helicopter lifted off, rotors chopping the dark. For the first time in years he didn't look away. Because he knew, the sky wasn't done with him yet. Now the climb steepens. Stakes tighten. The quiet man is running out of places to hide. The deployment order came at dawn. Crow read it twice, then a third time. Northern border. Mountain terrain. Limited air support. The words blurred into something familiar and unwelcome. Flying weather unpredictable. He folded the paper carefully and slid it into his pocket, feeling the old knot tighten in his chest. Around him, the barracks buzzed with motion. Zippers, metal clinks, low voices. Men preparing for another mission that might break them or bind them tighter. Merrick was on the list. Crow found out by accident. He was restocking his med bag when Merrick stepped into the room, crutches gone, ankles stiff but usable. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Finally Merrick said, "Didn't think they'd clear me this fast." Crow nodded. "You heal quick." Merrick's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. "You'd know." The tension hung there, unresolved. Too much history. Too many unsaid words. During the briefing, Halden outlined the operation. Insert near a ridgeline. Secure intel. Exfil under fire likely. One primary bird. One backup on standby 30 minutes out. Crow's pulse ticked up. Halfway through, the power flickered. The projector dimmed, then stabilized. No one laughed this time. As they filed out, Halden caught Crow's arm. "Walk with me." They stepped onto the tarmac. The morning air was cold, clean. A helicopter sat nearby, crew performing pre-flight checks. "You trust yourself?" Halden asked suddenly. Crow didn't answer right away. He watched the crew chief run a hand along the fuselage, listening. "I trust my hands," Crow said. "I don't trust what's in my head." Halden nodded. "Fear doesn't disqualify you. It qualifies you, if you don't let it drive." Crow looked at the helicopter. The sky above it was pale blue, endless. "I'm not asking," Halden continued. "I'm telling you, be ready." That night, Crow dreamed of the crash. But this time the engine didn't fail. This time his father sat beside him, calm, older than Crow remembered. "You don't stop loving the sky just because it hurts you," he said. Crow woke before dawn, breath shallow, heart pounding. The mission went bad fast. Insertion was clean, but extraction turned into chaos. Enemy fire pinned them down near an abandoned compound. Radios crackled with bad news. The primary bird had taken damage inbound. Hydraulic failure. Forced to divert. "Backup bird is 30 minutes out," the radio said. "Hold position." 30 minutes might as well have been a lifetime. Crow treated a chest wound under fire, blood soaking into the dirt. He heard the familiar whine of an engine overhead, too high, too unstable. The damaged helicopter appeared, wobbling like a wounded bird. Crow looked up. Every instinct screamed. "It's wrong. It's failing. It won't make it." The helicopter lurched, smoke trailing. Halden's voice cut through the noise. "If that bird goes down, we're done." Crow felt the decision rising inside him, hot and terrifying. His secret. His fear. His choice. He stood. "I can help," he said louder than he meant to. Merrick turned sharply. "Help how?" Crow met his eyes. "I know what's happening to that bird." The helicopter dipped again, alarm audible even from the ground. Halden stared at Crow, searching his face. Before he could answer, the engine coughed. "Art." And the sky began to fall. "We're in the escalation zone now. Fast, slow, fast. Truth under fire." The helicopter dropped 20 feet in a heartbeat. Men shouted. Rifles came up uselessly as if bullets could hold the sky in place. Dust and debris spiraled beneath the failing bird, its rotors chopping unevenly, the sound wrong, too hollow, too strained. Crow's heart slammed against his ribs. Fuel starvation. Partial hydraulic loss. The pilot was fighting ghosts. "I can talk him down," Crow said. The words felt unreal as they left his mouth. Halden's head snapped toward him. "Say that again." "I can talk him down," Crow repeated, louder, steadier. "He's compensating the wrong way. If he keeps fighting it, he'll roll." Merrick stepped forward. "You're guessing." Crow shook his head. "I'm not." Another violent dip. The helicopter yawed left, barely correcting. Halden grabbed the radio. "Bird 2, this is ground lead. Status." "Static." Then a strained voice. "We're losing her. Controls aren't responding clean." Crow reached for the handset. His hands trembled. "Let me," he said. Halden hesitated. A second too long. Then he handed it over. Crow brought the radio to his mouth. The world narrowed to breath and sound. "Bird 2, this is Crow," he said. "Listen to me carefully." "Who is this?" the pilot snapped. "I'm a medic," Crow replied, and then quietly, "and a pilot." The pilot didn't respond right away. The helicopter lurched again. "Your intake's starving," Crow continued. "You're overcorrecting on the cyclic." "Is it?" "Don't fight the yaw, ride it." "Negative," the pilot said. "That'll drop us." "It won't," Crow said. His voice steadied as memory took over. "Trust me. I've been where you are." Silence. Then, "Talk to me." Crow closed his eyes. He saw the cockpit again. Felt the yoke in his hands. Heard his father's voice, calm in the chaos. "Reduce power slightly," Crow said. "Let the engine breathe. You're chasing stability that isn't there." The helicopter dipped, then leveled. A collective breath released on the ground. "You're bringing her in hot," Crow said. "Aim past us. Use the slope. Don't flare early." "Copy," the pilot said, voice shaking. "Don't leave me." "I won't," Crow replied. "I promise." The helicopter descended, ugly but controlled. The skid slammed into dirt, bounced once, twice, then held. The rotors slowed. The engine died. For a second no one moved. Then the world exploded into sound. Cheers. Shouts. Men running. Crow lowered the radio slowly, legs weak. Merrick stared at him like he was seeing a ghost. Halden placed a hand on Crow's shoulder. "You just saved everyone." Crow shook his head. "I should have done it sooner." Before Halden could respond, gunfire cracked from the ridge. "They're moving," someone yelled. No time to process. No time to breathe. The backup bird was still 20 minutes out. Enemy forces were closing fast. Crow looked at the grounded helicopter. Damaged but flyable, barely. The pilot climbed out, face pale. "She won't make altitude," he said. "Not with weight." Halden's eyes flicked from the bird to his men. Crow felt the truth settle into place, heavy and unavoidable. "I'll fly her," he said. Merrick's head snapped up. You said you stopped. I did, Crow replied. That doesn't mean I forgot. Halden searched his face one last time. If you do this, there's no hiding anymore. Crow nodded. I'm done hiding. He turned toward the helicopter, toward the sky that had taken everything from him. And this time, he didn't look away. This is the peak. Everything collides here: fear, blame, fire, redemption. The rotor blades began to turn. Slow at first. Uneven. Complaining. Elias Crow climbed into the cockpit like a man stepping into a memory he tried to drown. The seat was narrower than he remembered. The smell, fuel, dust, burned oil, hit him hard enough to steal his breath. For a split second he saw flames instead of gauges. He forced his hands steady, wrapped his fingers around the controls. Outside, gunfire snapped closer. Enemy silhouettes moved along the ridge, dark against the pale sky. Hurry, someone shouted. Crow keyed the intercom. Load light. Fast. Men moved with brutal efficiency. Wounded first, then ammo, then the rest. Every extra pound mattered. Merrick stood at the open door, rifle up, covering the ridge. He glanced into the cockpit. If this goes bad, Merrick said, voice tight, I won't forgive you. Crow met his eyes. I wouldn't ask you to. Merrick hesitated, then stepped aboard. The last man jumped in as bullets sparked against the fuselage. Go. Go. Halden yelled. Crow pulled power gently. Not fighting the bird. Listening to it. The helicopter lifted, slow, ugly, alive. Rounds cracked past the windshield. The engine whined in protest. Warning lights flickered like dying stars. Crow's chest tightened. Easy. Easy. He adjusted the collective just enough, angling toward the slope like he'd told the other pilot. Wind slammed into them, shoving hard. The helicopter dipped. Merrick swore. Someone screamed. Crow didn't. He remembered his father's voice again. Asterisk, don't wrestle the sky. Work with it. Asterisk. Come on, Crow whispered. I've got you. They cleared the ridge by feet. Not yards. Feet. Then the engine surged, once, then began to die. Fuel pressure dropped. Alarms screamed. No, 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 the crew chief shouted. Crow's hands moved on instinct. Years buried, not erased. He cut power, adjusted pitch, traded altitude for forward motion. Below them, nothing but rock and scrub. Ahead, flat desert. The helicopter shuddered violently. Merrick crawled forward, gripping a strap. Crow. I know. Crow snapped. Then softer, I know. The engine finally quit. Silence fell, terrifying and total. They were a falling machine now. Crow flared at the last second. The skid slammed down hard. Bone rattling. Metal screamed. The helicopter skidded across the desert, spinning, dust swallowing everything. Then stopped. Stillness. For one heartbeat, no one moved. Then Merrick laughed. A raw, broken sound. Holy hell. Men poured out, dragging wounded, forming a perimeter. Crow stayed seated, hands still on the controls, breathing like he'd just run miles underwater. Halden climbed up, helmet off, eyes locked on him. You did it, Halden said. Crow shook his head. Tears blurred his vision. I didn't freeze. That was the victory. Merrick approached slowly. Stopped inches from the cockpit. You saved us, Merrick said. The anger was gone. Burned clean. I was wrong. Crow met his gaze. So was I. In the distance, rotors thundered, the backup bird finally arriving. Crow leaned back, exhaustion crashing over him. The sky hadn't taken him this time. It had given him back. And as he stepped out of the cockpit at last, dust clinging to his boots, every man there knew. The quiet medic wasn't invisible anymore. Here we go. Resolution. Healing. Meaning. The last silence breaks. The ceremony was small. No cameras. No speeches meant for the public. Just a formation on the tarmac under a pale morning sky, the wind moving gently through the flags. The damaged helicopter sat off to the side, scarred and still like a witness that had survived. Elias Crow stood at attention, uniform pressed, boots clean for the first time in weeks. His hands didn't shake anymore. Commander Halden stepped forward. His voice was calm, steady, meant only for the men standing there. On a day when extraction failed, when options vanished, and when silence could have been the easier choice, Halden said, Petty Officer Elias Crow chose responsibility. Halden pinned the medal to Crow's chest. The medal felt heavier than it should have. Not because of the weight, because of what it carried. Crow's thoughts drifted, not to the firefight, not to the crash, but to a quiet airfield long ago. To his father's smile. To a promise made in fear and finally broken in courage. After the formation broke, Merrick approached him. No sarcasm. No edge. "You flying again?" Merrick asked. Crow considered the question. The sky above was wide and blue, endless without being cruel. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'm not afraid of it anymore." Merrick nodded. "That's enough." Halden joined them, hands on his hips. "For what it's worth," he said to Crow, "the question I asked that day, I didn't expect your answer." Crow looked at him. "Neither did I." Later, alone, Crow sat on the steps of the hangar as the sun dipped low, painting the desert gold. A helicopter lifted off in the distance, smooth and confident. Crow watched it rise. He didn't flinch. Some wounds don't disappear. They settle. They become part of the structure that holds you up instead of the weight that pulls you down. Crow understood that now. He was still the medic. Still the quiet one. But when the moment came, when the sky asked its question, he knew his answer. And so did everyone else.